Thank you. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Caden Cotton Blake. For those of you who do not know me, I am running for San Pablo City Council. I am a lifelong resident of San Pablo that has seen many different shades of this incredible city. We have an amazing community, a very close-knit community, and we face some unique challenges, which is why I'm committed to reimagining what public safety, affordable housing, and economic development look like for the city of San Pablo. As a lifelong resident, I've had the opportunity to engage with countless members of my community in our campaign, talking to over 5,000 residents, knocking on doors. And one of the consistent issues that we face is a line of communication, an intentional communication that makes our residents feel heard, understood, and like the issues that matter to them are reaching City Hall. And so we're working to bridge that gap and just incredibly blessed to have such an amazing community to support me, an amazing team of volunteers, endorsements, and supports throughout the community to make sure that we can collectively make San Pablo a home to all.
Thank you, Caden. And so now for the questions, I will go ahead and ask the first one. What are your top three priorities if elected, and how will they be funded?
Perfect. Thank you for the question. The top three priorities, as I previously mentioned, are economic development, public safety, and affordable housing. Starting with economic development, Contra Costa College is our launch pad for our students, our next generation, our current adults, and folks who are looking to pivot into the workforce. And that funding and foundation and infrastructure already exists. There are programs that already exist. It's about making them into intentional pipelines rather than programmatically funded operations. And it's crucial that the infrastructure that's already laid out within West Contra Costa Unified School District, the city of San Pablo's funding for programs that exist already, and Contra Costa College just reach alignment. So it's more of intentional positioning rather than the need to source new funding for work that's already being done. It's just the lens that it's being shaped and framed from. For affordable housing, this is one of our toughest issues in the city of San Pablo. We're a very small city and we're a very compact city. So one of the major issues that we face is, especially in the conversation of new housing, is where do we build? So this is where the partnerships start and the funding starts through supports from our county, through our state. You see the work being done in Richmond with some of the scattered sites. I have the opportunity to work for a community land trust, which is a fantastic framework and model that is able to create permanently affordable housing and using and leveraging some of these already built homes to renovate for the purposes of affordable housing. And it doesn't stop at homes, it goes to nonprofits, local businesses, and cooperatives that need that foundation. And the community land trust model allows for funding and sourcing for that work. And public safety, we already have an amazingly funded uh, police department with a great connection to the community already.
Thank you, Caden. And your second question will come from Jamin.
Um, how would you work with others to support the city's priorities?
Um, I like the broad framing of this question specifically because there are a lot of others that need to be worked with and engaged. Others start at the community level, which we're already doing, even in being a candidate, not even being an elected yet, actually getting out in the streets and talking and finding out what our residents need. And that's shaping these platforms in this campaign. These aren't things that came to me on my own. These are conversations where the first thing that we ask is, what's something that you want to see change or be preserved here in the city of San Pablo? So we're actively taking that feedback. Now, the other partnerships, we talked about that affordable housing piece, is the relationships with our county, of which we already have a very strong one with our county supervisor, John Joya. We have a lot of West County sourced programs and infrastructure that's in the city of San Pablo as well. The West County Behavioral Health Center, and our fire department is also sourced through the county rather than just a city department. So the infrastructure is built. Again, it's that pivoting to figure out how do we source this different funding that already exists into the priorities that our residents are actually feeling, which again boils down to affordable housing, figuring out where the opportunities are to say, okay, what can we do with this land that we do have? If you're familiar with the city of San Pablo, most of the free land that exists in the space is near Contra Costa College. We have now some of it allocated to the storage facility. Previously, where the middle school was, that is now kind of empty land still. It's important to remember that these are some of the only tools that we have in the city because of our infrastructure. At the statewide level, it's important to make sure that we have strong connections to funding to source for these pipelines and our programs that we want to build internally as well. Again, amazing relationship with the police department. They do an immense amount of programming in our community. They had a Boots and Badges event engaging the community recently, National Night Out, continuing to build the foundation.
Thank you, Caden. Nadine will ask the third question.
Do you support forming a citizen police oversight review board to propose changes in police budgets, citizen contact policy, and to investigate citizen complaints?
So first, I will say yes. It's important to make sure that we have some oversight and that there's infrastructure in place for the community to say, hey, we have a really great relationship right now. Down the line, if leadership changes, or if the sentiments of the department change, or the social narratives of the department change, the community can come together and say, hey, we need to be able to shape some of these changes in our city in a meaningful way. I think the real question is when it comes to oversight and review boards is these are tried and tested in other places, but what are the sources of the accountability? Where does it start and where does it stop? So it's not just putting another board in place. We have we have infinite boards, as you all know, as leaders of in many different spaces. It's about how do we make this an actual accountable space, and that's something I would love to workshop with our local infrastructure that already exists, our cities parallel to us that are already doing this work to see how they've made it work and how we can do it in an intentional manner here in the city as well. So I'll keep that one short, but yes.
Thank you so much. And now, Sherry, for question number four.
Caden, systemic racism has been prominent in the news. Do you feel there is systemic racism in San Pablo? And if so, how would you address it as a member of the leadership of the city?
So that is a very great question. And I'm actually glad that the committee decided to ask that because systemic racism is it's a plague that reaches far beyond our city limits, and the ramifications of broader, even national narratives around systemic racism have ripple effects into our communities. So I think the question is a little bit interesting because it does exist. However, to tackle it only at the local level and assume that there's going to be broad levels of change, we have to start with education. We have to start with getting rid of misinformation about our communities, breaking stigmas. That goes back to even the education piece with Contra Costa College and what we see with the socioeconomic, which turns to that systemic racism conversation of saying, okay, going to a community college for 2 years is poor. And it's not the same as going into this four-year institution as directly out of high school versus college. And those narratives, things even simple as that, even though they're socioeconomic conversations, we look at the broader group of individuals and communities that are facing these challenges and have that option as a launch pad and for it to be misconstrued as a negative somehow, those are some of the places we need to start locally. And those are some of the narratives that we can actively begin changing now through local leadership, not even just as an elected, but as a community member, educating our community. And that's the work that we're already doing through California Young Democrats, through our local NAACP chapter. We're already breaking down these barriers. So it's just work that needs to continue, and I can't wait to have the opportunity to do it on such a platform as City Council.
Thank you. Now, for your fifth question. Does your city have a plan to address the need of the homeless? Do you know the current homeless rate in your city? What are your plans to address the situation?
Thank you for the question. I think it's very important to note that infrastructure is actually being built. So a couple years ago, and this is something that ties back to some of the communication with our community. There is infrastructure that was being developed for an unhoused rehabilitation center that is near Contra Costa College, kind of to the right of it. I can't think directionally what direction it is, but it's near Contra Costa College, and the intent of the infrastructure is to take formerly unhoused folks who are looking to pivot and step into a rental opportunity to get back on their feet. That infrastructure was built with the support of County Supervisor John Joya's office and the county at large. And so we do have some infrastructure that already exists. In a Richmond situation, you have folks like GRIP, you have other community organizations that are doing this work parallel. And it's also important to not limit the situations of our city to those of these different borders, because if you're not a homeowner or even a renter in our city, these do extend beyond our borders. But we do have the infrastructure being made currently to ensure that that folks do have an opportunity to get back on their feet. Um, in 2026, uh, I think it was 2,200 and some change folks that were experiencing um, an issue with homelessness or being unhoused in Contra Costa County. Um, and it's important to note that the majority of these folks are ages 25 to 24, 25 in that area. And it's very unfortunate because, again, it keeps tying back to the education and opportunity piece. We have Contra Costa College right there in our city to provide opportunities for folks who are looking to get on their feet. So taking advantage of the infrastructure that we already have, like these rehabilitation opportunities in some of our other departments, to build that pipeline to get folks back on their feet, using education as a start.
Thank you. Question number 6 will now come from Jamin.
Do you support or oppose rent stabilization and renter protections, example, just cause, in your city? Why or why not?
Uh, yes, frankly. I've had some great conversations with representatives of Rising Juntos, of ACE, who are in the streets doing this work actively, who are providing truthful information to our neighbors to understand, because there's been an immense amount of propaganda, again, at a national scale over the years. I received a bachelor's of science in economics from San Jose State University. The reason that I went down this path was because there was so much information specifically around the economics of these things. And in learning that and hearing about rent control in this practitioner format, I've learned that there are a lot of assumptions that are made, and there's a lot of misinformation that is based on those assumptions that travels very far. So I'm very much in support of making sure that our community has local tenant protections, just cause. As I mentioned, I work for a community land trust, affordable housing developer, not just an advocate. So seeing this on the developmental lens as well. Um, it's important to always remember, I mean, San Pablo specifically is a predominantly renter city. Will you see that in the voting base? No, and that's interesting. It's about 50-50 when it comes to our renters and our homeowners. But in reality, our constituents and citizens, our neighbors, are predominantly renters. And we want to provide pipelines to home ownership. And that's where we start to work with our statewide community land trust, our community land trust network, Richmond Land, the organization that I actually work for in Richmond that's trying to do this work actively, but it starts with this because we've been here before. This measure was brought forward in the city of San Pablo in the past. And again, that education piece, you will always hear folks say, okay, we need a little bit more education before we move it forward. But it's like people don't have time to be educated if you're worried about getting kicked out of the house next month, right? Like that is where we start before we can start to have that conversation.
Thank you, Caden. Now for question number 7, it will come from Nadine.
What would be your plan to diversify economic dependence on the casino?
So there are two sides to this question, but I will try and stay very direct. Again, I continue to mention Contra Costa College because it is such a launch pad to stimulate investment in our city. The more our folks are educated collectively, that makes industry want to move back to San Pablo. That makes tech want to move to San Pablo. That makes external investment when our education is strong, when our residents are moving back into the city instead of the broader issue that we're facing of when we're knocking these doors, there are a majority of people who are have been here for less than 8 years. 5 to 8 years is kind of the range because there was a broad push about a decade ago of community members in Richmond, San Pablo, all throughout the Bay Area, predominantly Black and Brown communities that could not afford to stay here and migrated inland to Antioch, Pittsburgh. And so it starts with actually making sure that our residents are practitioners, are educated, and these are the foundational investments before we try and throw a patch and summon investment without the infrastructure of people to work these jobs in the first place. So starting there, but also making sure that um, uh, our businesses, our industry, that again, folks are moving into San Pablo to build and to invest in some of this infrastructure, of course, strengthening partnerships and opportunities at the statewide funding, federal funding level, even though I know federal is hard right now. For the future tense, of course, making sure that these partnerships and opportunities are being addressed directly.
Thank you. Question number 8 will come from Sherry.
What is your position on transitioning from fossil fuel and the refineries that are currently, surround San Pablo in our area?
Thank you for the question. So first of all, I'm a strong proponent of renewable energy, of seeing renewable energy infrastructure move into our areas as well, because again, these new sources of energy still require industry on the back end. And when we think about this collectively, there are two sides of this conversation, which is we understand that oil is poisoning our communities, period, point blank, period. The question is, how do we develop this new industry with our union workers and representatives in mind, who are our neighbors that are trying to live in the city, who are the ones that are being forced out by not being able to actually afford to stay where we are. So it's important that as we transition, that the right conversations are being had and that the folks who are doing this work, who are going to develop the infrastructure for clean energy, are always part of the conversation. And that's something that I think has been lacking collectively. Everyone, I won't say everyone as an absolute, but there are a lot of organizations and institutions who are working in silos and are not including the folks who are actually being impacted by this industry shift. So we have to make sure that we're actually centering and prioritizing our workers, our neighbors, and the folks that are laying this foundation to begin with. But yes, I am in support of the transition, specifically to uh, renewable energy.
Thank you. And now for question number 8. Do you support and would you vote for a moratorium on data centers in the face of increased data need of consumers in your area?
So the short answer is, I'm sorry, I'm rereading the question from the chat just to make sure that I actually answer it head on. Um, yes. And the reason that I took a second to read it is because, again, I have a background having worked in the Alameda County DA's office, Contra Costa County Supervisor John Joya's office, and other spaces of practitioners and leaders who have been trying to tackle this AI thing for years. And it's interesting because there are a lot of folks who have not taken full positions because we don't know enough about this beast. But with that in mind, it's important to note that the infrastructure and the consumption of water and what this will do to our community is a negative and something that we don't want to see um, taking space, right? Everywhere there's a additional data center or a factory built is somewhere that housing could be. And I say that in a kind of broad sense because of course there are different spaces sanctioned off for the different types of work. But it's important to make sure that the voices of our community are being centered, and our community is not a fan of AI, to be frank, and for data centers moving in our community. You can hear the voices of just a couple days ago, Communities for a Better Environment in Richmond had um an art presentation where the community came together to make signage to um, inform our neighbors to say, hey, this is not something that's benefiting our communities. Again, what I will caution is always having a conversation with some of our um, laborers, our unions, to find out what they are feeling, because again, they're the ones who are working these jobs and these infrastructures, and to keep an eye on our folks and to know what our community is feeling in the process. But would I be in support of a moratorium? I apologize for always coming around, but I want you to get a full scope of my thought process and where I'm coming from on these very significant issues.
And we appreciate that. So we will go ahead and provide you with your last question, and that will come from Jamin.
Okay, so I'm going to put it in the chat because it's a long one. Would you oppose or support any contract with surveillance corporations, example Flock? And if so, what guardrails and oversight would you require? That's part one. Part two, what is the most and least as a percentage of general fund expenditures do you think your city's police department should have?
Would I support any contracts? I can't in honesty say that I would. Um, El Cerrito has been a pivotal point of reference for our county on when the community speaks up and says that they don't want something in their city to move that forward. Plain and simple. Flock cameras, have been a persistent issue, not just for our citizens in the area, but especially from our undocumented communities, of which we have a pretty large one in the city of San Pablo. And it's important to recognize when our constituents, our neighbors, are being compromised by infrastructure. Again, it's interesting because when talking to community, there's a very strong relationship with the San Pablo Police Department and our community meeting our actual neighbors as we're knocking doors. But the flock issue is something you'd be surprised does not come up very often. But when it's asked about directly, then it's like, oh, the AI surveillance, then you get into that conversation. But in terms of guardrails, I think it's important. So this goes back to the conversation we had before with the oversight board that was mentioned in an earlier question. And again, needing to take a real look at what other cities have done infrastructurally that has worked with communities. So this is not just talking to representatives and specifically not just leadership, but city employees that are actively implementing this in other spaces. One of the things that I've learned from being a practitioner in the public service space and working in community government is when you talk to the city employees, the district attorney's office employees, that's where you learn what's really happening on the ground and these small tweaks that make all the difference. So it's really engaging the core group that need to be just generally engaged. Um,
Thank you so much. So with that, I will allow you to proceed with your closing statement, and you will be allotted a minute and a half for your closing statement.
Thank you. First of all, it's an incredible opportunity to speak to you all, to serve in different spaces from the committee to I'm the deputy regional director for the Bay Area region of California Young Democrats, the chair of the statewide Black Caucus, working together infrastructurally in these different spaces to develop these pipelines and platforms of communication that we've already discussed. In this past year, we've implemented a system that has connected over 200 young Democrats from across the region to each other in a way that simply didn't exist before. We have built and designed pipelines and opportunities and training for not just our young people, our adults, our candidates, representatives, and those who are aspiring to be so, opportunities to step into these spaces and to learn how business is conducted, I've been honored to have amazing endorsements from our County Supervisor, John Joya, to Assemblymember Ash Kalra, two of our amazing San Pablo City Council members, Abel Pineda and Patricia Ponce, our Secretary of the California Democratic Party, Diana Love, and just an amazing backing of community supports, over 30 amazing volunteers who come out consistently to walk weeks, weekends. We had an amazing kickoff yesterday for the campaign, which you guys will probably see pictures of later. But yes, just incredibly well. So thank you all for your time.